But I want to welcome everybody for joining us tonight to find out all about the less traveled trails. We definitely, as we were saying, definitely got a nice taste today of what's in store for us. So you're gonna find out all of the great places to go. This year has been a really interesting year. If you're new to hiking, welcome. If you're a novice or a veteran and with the trail conference for eons, and you're just looking for a place to, a little bit on the quieter side, this webinar is for you. We appreciate all of the support that everybody's been given the trail conference, and we really welcome all of everybody who is new to our trail family. So Don is a spectacular colleague. He is the Director of Donor Advising at the Trail Conference and the go-to on all things trails. If I have any sort of question, I'm like, Don, what do I do? Or Don, how's this trail? Or do you have any suggestions? If you saw in his bio, he has almost 50 years of exploring the trails, not only in the United States, but also in Europe. So again, if you haven't, please mute yourself. And if you have any questions, please chat them in the chat box. We would love to answer them, and we'll have some Q&A at the end. And so, yes, so without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Don.
Thank you, Jen. Appreciate it. And welcome, everybody. I just want to start by saying, if you have a favorite area that you'd like to hear about tonight, I'm going to be covering kind of the whole region, but do, chat in anything specific that you'd like to hear about. I'll try and help you the best I can. Stump this presenter if you want. The other thing I'm going to say is that the presentation tonight, none of this is proprietary information. So, there's a lot of information here, and so feel free to take a picture of any of the screens that I put up and refer back to them, and email us. Just let us know, if you have questions or have trouble finding a particular trail location. So I'll get us started. Just quickly about myself, I'm a guy who spends an awful lot of time out in the woods, too much maybe. I lead a lot of hikes and trail runs. Had the chance to do the Catskill peaks a number of years ago, and I keep going back to them in the Adirondacks and so forth. I like to write hiking guidebooks. I'm a tree hugger. I work on the Environmental Commission in my free time and do other advocacy type things on the side, maintain trails, and I've been on the board. I've had a lot of different roles, and I think what has really blown me away about this organization is that it's about just so much more than trails. The organization itself, I got involved with it by reading a hiking book and talking about, who the Trail Conference is, and they kind of enlightened me that, it's not a club. The Trail Conference is the reason why we have trails. And it's this amazing kind of model of volunteers and small staff that come together to take care of over 2,000 miles of trails. A lot of them are in very far-flung places, hard to get to, and doing bridges and steps and boardwalks, saving land for trails. And the big job is, training and recruiting and supporting all these thousands of volunteers. It's a very efficient way to do it. The parks love the organization for how much time and money we save them. But, long story short, it's a model that's been going on for 100 years. It's very efficient. And it's the reason that we have a trail culture in this crazy, overpopulated New York metro area. I've been to a lot of parts of the United States and places where we don't have a trail culture, and it makes a difference, especially here where we have such a high population density. So the areas we're going to talk about tonight are pretty much the areas where the Trail Conference maintains trails, which would be from central North Jersey, let's say Hunterdon County, Essex County, up north through to the borderlands areas, into the Hudson Valley, the Shawangunk, the Catskills, little bit north of the Catskills, where we maintain the long path, and then east of the Hudson River as well, in New York. So those are the areas we're going to talk about, and jump right into it. Now, I give other talks, talks on trail running, talks on safety, preparedness, and so forth. That's not the scope of this talk. So I'll just touch briefly on the safety tips. We always talk about starting early, making sure we end before we have, long before we lose daylight, having a safety kit, a first aid kit, mapping out our route, and being aware of backcountry hazards such as poison ivy, snakes, ticks, and leaving bears their proper space. So, but we'll talk more about that in another presentation. We're here to talk about less traveled trails, and there's lots of good reasons to explore less traveled trails. I mean, obviously the experience is a lot nicer when it's not crowded. You know, social distancing is less of a concern than it had been, but still there's that. You see a lot more flora and fauna. And then the other thing is that many of the lightly used trails can really use our feet on them to keep the treadway maintained, and from becoming overgrown or hard to follow. And also, if you ever go to places where trails are not heavily used, it can encourage bad things to happen, like ATV use, landowner encroachment on parks, illegal encroachment and littering and all kinds of other crazy stuff. So don't feel bad about exploring less traveled trails. Feel good about it. And we're also spreading out our impact, you know, from some of these really overused parks. So 5 reasons to hike less traveled trails. The way we chose the hikes is to, you know, kind of find ones that are less likely to attract casual hikers, that aren't right along a big highway, ones that are worth checking out, ones that have enough parking, and hikes where, you know, again, a lightly used network that can use our presence. So let's do it. We're going to talk about the different regions. I'm going to start in North Jersey and kind of work my way northward. One thing I want to say is that for those of you who are from New York, you know, New York is one of those regions where the environmental movement came early. It came, you know, in the 19th century. New Jersey was a little bit late to the party. So as a result, what you find along the northernmost parts of New Jersey and just across into New York, and also on the western border, is this huge, huge expanse of parkland. The topography is exactly the same as it is in, let's say, Harriman or Sterling Forest. The altitudes are the same. People don't know that, and as a result, some of these parks on the North Jersey border are really worth checking out because they're less crowded and they have just extensive networks of trails. So we'll talk about that a little bit, and we'll start with the borderland. So the northern New Jersey Highlands is an area that was preserved around 2000, 2001 by the governors of New York and New Jersey, but it mostly affects North Jersey. And it's designed to preserve the water, the drinking water. So Sterling Forest and all of the northern highlands are basically development restricted. And as a result, there's lots and lots of parkland there. And in particular, the Newark watershed, which has nothing to do with Newark and doesn't look at all like Newark, is out in my town of West Milford. It's a very, very wild area, and people don't go there that much because it costs money to visit there. You know, you could go to Mohonk and pay $14 to spend a day at the Mohonk Preserve, or you could spend $14 and get to spend a year here at the Pequannock watershed. So if you are interested in checking out this area, you do need a permit. You go to 223 Echo Lake Road in West Milford, New Jersey, or you can check out, just Google Newark watershed, Pequannock watershed permits, and they'll hook you up with a $14 permit. So bottom line is there are some great hikes there. This is going to be found on your North Jersey map, and the North Jersey map set is going to be that we're coming out with a new edition. So sit tight on that. It should be coming out in June or July, and it's going to have massive updates. But this is part of it. The Highlands Trail runs through the watershed. Beautiful areas like Dunker Pond, Clinton Reservoir, which is a huge wild body of water, Buckabear Pond, which looks like it could be in Maine, and then great views from the Barefoot Fire Tower. I recommend checking out the Clinton West and Red trails. If you're a hiker, you'll get kind of the water views, you'll get kind of the whole picture of it. And if you're a trail runner, I would recommend you make use of Stevens Road. Stevens Road has parking. It's off of Union Valley Road, which is County Route 513. Stevens Road goes off and has a parking area. You can run the Hanks Pond West Trail and the Fire Tower Ridge Trail, which is pretty runnable and very spectacular. So under the radar is the watershed land. We're looking at Hanks Pond here, and we're looking at the Barefoot Fire Tower. Another watershed not far away is the North Jersey District Water Supply Commission, which is basically in Ringwood, right next to West Milford in Upper Passaic County. It's right again along the border with Sterling Forest area. And this, you don't have to have a permit to hike here. So it's a bit more crowded, but still pretty quiet. You can hike, again, the Highlands Trail, which is a nice wild 160-mile trail through New York and New Jersey. And it'll take you through places like you'll see iron mines and beautiful pines and reservoir views. Windbeam is a lone mountain up there that's over 1,000 feet, almost 1,100 feet. That just looks very dramatic because it has a huge drop down to the water. The Stonetown Circular Trail, which many of you probably know, is a 10-mile hike that goes over 5 mountains, and it feels like more than 10 miles for sure. Feels like about a half marathon. And then another one that people may not think of is hiking a loop around the Monksville Reservoir. So Stonetown Circular Trail basically follows above the Wanacue Reservoir. The Wanacue Reservoir connects up to the Monksville Reservoir, which is just up the dam from it. And you can hike around that as well by checking out the Highlands Trail and Stonetown Road, the Haas and Clever Iron Trail, and the Green and White Trails. So definitely check these out. All these are in your North Jersey map set. You're supposed to stay on the marked trails here. You will see some ATVs exploring down to the water's edge. It's very beautiful down there too, but you're supposed to stay on the trails. And this is a view of the Wanacue Reservoir from Windbeam Mountain. This was during a drought, so you can kind of see a defined shoreline everywhere from where the water had receded. That was a couple of years ago. Moving to the west a little bit, it's Wawayanda State Park. Wawayanda is huge. It's a huge state park, again, following right along the northern border with upstate New York. I was just there a couple of hours ago doing a trail run, and it's just gorgeous. How to describe it? It has a couple of views, but it's real. What really makes Wawayanda special is that it's got Atlantic white cedars. It has swamps. It has huge, long stands of rhododendrons, and it has beautiful lakes as well. And it just feels like it certainly doesn't feel like you're in New Jersey. I'll leave it at that. Best ways to get to it to avoid the crowds would be to use Cherry Ridge Road, which is off of Clinton Road. You can use the west access to Cherry Ridge Road. You can also go by way of the Pequannock watershed. So further south on, I'm just going to use my cursor to point to this. There's a parking area here along Clinton Road, which will lead you up from the Pequannock watershed into Wawayanda, which is the darker green. And you can do some great loops out here, and you will not see a soul. Areas to avoid would be the Pochuck Boardwalk, which is super popular along the Appalachian Trail. Definitely avoid it like the plague on a weekend. The Clinton Road parking lot, I'm just going to find that, which is about here, can get busy on weekends. And Warwick Turnpike, which leads from West Milford Township up to Warwick, New York. Great trailhead, but can be busy on the weekends. And the main entrance to Waiweanda can get busy as well during the summertime because everybody wants to go swimming there. These Cherry Ridge and Pequannock Watershed are great ways to access the park. Just a little sampling of what you'll see in Waiweanda to give you an idea. So just going to take a little break here. Jennifer, is there anything in the chat that I can come back to you on that, but let me know if anybody
I do have a few questions that definitely pertain just particularly to this slides.
Awesome.
When you get a permit, does it apply to just the car or the person? So if somebody could bring friends with them, or do each person who's physically on a trail have to have a permit?
Good question. Technically, it applies to the person and car, one person, one car only. But I have never had any trouble. I mean, the only time that you would have to really be concerned is if your car is parked there without a sticker. Okay. So if you're going there to hike with your spouse, you're never going to have a problem as long as your car is has a sticker on it.
Okay, and then just one other, ATVs are not allowed, correct?
Right, ATVs are not allowed in any public parks, period. And yeah, so this is a watershed area, they're not allowed there either. And yet they're still there somehow. Right,
exactly, yes, I hear them behind my house for sure. And then are dogs allowed on any of these?
Yes, none of the places I talked about have any dog restrictions other than that they all have to be on a leash. So it can be a long leash, but supposed to be leashed.
Okay, you're good.
All right, awesome. Yeah, I mean, that's what the rules say. So just quoting the rule. So again, Waiweanda, I like to think of Waiweanda as having three different parts. There's the westernmost part, which is going up to the very popular Stairway to Heaven, across the Pochuck Boardwalk area, and out to Pochuck Mountain. That's the westernmost side, that's more crowded. The middle of the park is kind of what you see on the top of your screen here. And that's what many people think of as Waiweanda proper. You'll find some great secluded cedar swamps, boardwalks, and trails and lakes back in there. And then there's the eastern section. So people know Terrace Pond, which you can access from Clinton Road, and now you can access it from Warwick Turnpike as well. This area is just gorgeous. And the trail conference has been very busy in West Milford, working on different trails. So what you'll see if you go there now is you'll see a floating walkway that was just constructed around the north end of Terrace Pond. Really cool to check out. And then also, there's a loop trail that didn't exist before, which is the dark blue loop that you're seeing here. So Pinecliff Lake, which is actually where I live, is way down at the bottom of the mountain, and everything up here is on top of the mountain. So the blue Terrace Pond North Loop, it's about 8.4 miles if you do it from Warwick Turnpike. Very rugged, but an awesome experience. Definitely one not to be missed. And the views are just spectacular, really spectacular. You see lots of wildlife. I've seen porcupines, I've seen bobcats, and I've seen bears in those parks. Now I'm going to jump over to Northern Green. And Northern Green is another one that has multiple sections to it. Northern Green is cut across by two different roads. One is Otterhole Road or Glenwild Road. The other one is Westbrook Road. So you've got three parts. You've got the southernmost part, you've got the middle part, and then you've got Northern Green. Northern Green is north of Westbrook Road, and it's an awesome area to go. The other areas are very crowded, but Northern Green is not. So Monadnock Point, also on your North Jersey map, is going to take you to some really super views of the New York City skyline. It's also going to give you views of other mountains nearby and a view of a crazy quarry. And the quarry is what kind of cut into Northern Green in the late 90s and closed down a lot of the trails, which has caused the overcrowding in the southern sections. But Northern Green's pretty awesome. There's also a loop trail that was recently constructed called the Burnt Meadow Loop. It's a green trail, and you access it off of Burnt Meadow Road from the north side. So that's about a 3.5, 4 mile loop that you can do, and it has just a spectacular view of Monksville Reservoir. You get the whole picture of that. Long Pond Ironworks, also worth checking out, and that's up in the far north as well. And you'll see some iron mines and some pretty falls as well. So here's some of the scenery from up in this area. And now I'm going to jump over to the east, because I know a lot of you, are closer to the city and still want to find some parks that are not super crowded.
Don, before you move on to Bergen, could you just answer a quick question about Northern Green? Are bikes allowed?
Sure.
Mountain bikes?
Good question. So up until very recently, bikes were not allowed in any part of Northern Green. So in the southern part of Northern Green, in the central part of Northern Green, they're still not permitted, but there are mountain biking trails being built in the northern sections of the park. So there's a lot more room, real estate for people to play with there. And it also adjoins jungle habitat. The jungle habitat was a crazy old safari park back in the 1970s, which is now a mountain biking mecca. And so there's going to be a loop trail in the northernmost part of Northern Green where you can ride. And it looks like it's going to be pretty good. So hope that answers the question.
Thank you.
You bet. All right, so moving over to near Bergen and the burbs. Ringwood State Park is a place where mountain biking is definitely permitted. Lots of different options there.
How to find.
So talk a little bit about Ringwood. Ringwood also has undergone massive revisions. So you definitely want to get the new North Jersey map set when it comes out in June or July, because this area has been heavily impacted. Even the map I'm looking at right now has had some changes to it. But you can do some great loops in that park. Ilgenstein Rock has a beautiful view overlooking Bear Swamp Lake. And so I recommend that. And then further to the east, a lot of people go to Ramapo Reservation. Very popular park, very crowded park, but not a lot of people go right next door to Campgaw Reservation. It's a ski slope, it has a nice little network of trails and lots of parking, so do check out Campgaw. And both parks feature runnable trails, so if you're a trail runner, you'll find good stuff there as well. And you get great views as well, but you're getting closer to the city here. Now I'm going to jump over the last part of New Jersey side is Morris County. Morris County is basically everything south of Route 23. So the areas we've been talking about are to the north of Route 23. Now we're going to be south of Route 23. Farney Highlands Trail Network is it's about a 20-mile. There's a 20-mile trail called the Four Birds Trail. It's pretty wild. The northern section is part of the Pequannock watershed. So again, your permit for the watershed is going to get you into here. You won't see a lot of people. You will see some ATVs, but you'll also be up on the top of some spectacular cliffs. So for instance, when you're up here looking out down below at this massive wetland area, it's quite spectacular. And then you cross over to another cliff top area and you're basically by a ski area, an old abandoned ski area. And the views from here are equally spectacular. Then you cross down into this area and there's a river of rocks just off the trail in here that's worth checking out as well. Definitely check this out. Once you cross over to here, you've crossed Route 513 and you've got more spectacular views looking across to Charlottesburg Reservoir. And then beyond there, things get a bit sketchy down through here and a lot of ATV issues. But then the farther south sections over in here by Split Rock Reservoir are beautiful again. And now you're getting down toward Interstate Route 80. So that's pretty accessible for people who are close to the I-80 corridor.
Hey, Don, if you know while you're talking about a Pacific Trail, the length that they are.
Sure, yeah. The Farney Highlands Trail is almost 20 miles long. Um, and so that has pudding stone cliffs. I actually put this in right here. So we'll talk more about that. And these are some of the views. These are some of the cliffs that you'll see up on top, Blackrock Reservoir. And moving a little farther into Morris County. Morris County is an interesting area. You know, the wild northern section is pretty rugged and untamed. As you get farther south, you get into some very beautiful areas. And you know, down in Mendham, the home of former Governor Christie, is just a gorgeous place to go hiking. The Shift Nature Preserve has lots of miles of trails. They're all, you know, in the 2 to 4 mile range at the very most. But you can get a lot of collective miles in this park. Beautiful wetlands, history, no big views, but just beautiful nature. Silas Condict Park is in Kinnelon, also a home of a few of the rich and famous people of the world. Silas Condict is off Route 23 in Kinnelon, and the Patriots Path as well. Definitely recommend you check out around Bedminster and Chester, between Bedminster and Chester, New Jersey, the Patriots Path spur going from Willowwood Arboretum through Bamboo Brook, which is just beautiful, the Kay Environmental Center, the Black River Gorge, and onto the Chester Mill. That's about 7 miles in one direction. So and it has a loop option as well. But like I say, you just never know who you're going to see when you go into Morris County. You know, could be anybody. So, all right. So I'm going to jump over to the Pennsylvania, near the Pennsylvania side. We'll talk a little bit about some of the parks there. State Forest, fully off the radar for most people. It's a little bit more of a drive to get out there, but Stokes is an area where they do a lot of forestry management. It's on the Kittatinny Ridge, and I would recommend checking out places close to Tillman Ravine. Tillman Ravine is kind of a crowded place on weekends, but I have a loop here, the Red Maple Jacob's Ladder Loop, that is described over here, and that will that'll take you up to the ridge top along the Appalachian Trail and back down to where you can explore beautiful Tillman Ravine. On the northern side of Route 206 is Northern Stokes State Forest. There's a fantastic 17-mile loop called the Blue Mountain Loop. This takes you on a grand tour of the park and close to the Appalachian Trail. I just did a very brutal race there a couple weekends ago where we did the whole 17 miles. It's really nice to hike, but I don't think I'll run it again. It takes you through just beautiful sections. The geologic loop is the Tinsley Trail. You can check that out. This is all in your Delaware Water Gap Kittatinny Trails map set. So there's Stokes. To the south of there is the Delaware Water Gap National Recreation Area. This is not to be confused with the Delaware Water Gap itself. That's the area down by Route 80 that's so crowded. The Water Gap Recreation Area is up to the north of it, and you've got beautiful views of High Point and the Pennsylvania side. If you go, look up Blue Mountain Lake, because Blue Mountain Lake is a place where you can park, and then from there you can get to several different lakes. You can get to Hemlock Pond in just a couple miles. Hemlock Pond is very secluded, looks like it's in Canada, surrounded by evergreen trees. Indian Rocks has a view of the Delaware River, and then you can get more aggressive and add on places like Crater Lake, Lake Success, and Long Pine Pond. We just checked that out on a trail conference trail run the other weekend, and just beautiful up there. Long Pine Pond has an abandoned camp, so really cool old buildings to check out too. Again, take pictures of these if you want to save any of these for future reference. And then High Point State Park up in the northwest corner, where New York, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey all come together, is really super. The monument itself is a bit popular, but you can check out the southern end of the park. where the Appalachian Trail and the Iris Trail form a kind of a figure 8 loop. So you can come around like this, and you get about 7 miles or so of loop hike when you come through this way. And then you just go back. In the northern part of the park, I definitely recommend checking out the Shawangunk Ridge Trail. You can access from the Steeny Kill Trail off Route 23, pick up the Monument Trail, and then pick up the Shawangunk Ridge Trail. And then there's a beautiful cedar swamp in here. It's not quite as big as the one in Wawayanda, but also it's pretty good. And then you cross into New York, into Greenville, New York, on the Shawangunk Ridge Trail. The Shawangunk Ridge Trail, by the way, begins right at High Point, near the High Point Monument, and it continues for 74 miles all the way up into upstate New York. So that in itself is a wild, less traveled trail for you to explore. So we'll be getting to that now when we get to New York. This is a view from the Monument Trail looking across to New York and Pennsylvania from the New Jersey side. That's the Delaware River down below. All right, quick crossover into Pennsylvania. This is right along the Delaware again. The Pocono Environmental Education Center, and that's a wonderful place to check out. It's right off Route 209. You'll see lots of short trails in there that form loops. The other thing is along Route 209, which follows the Delaware River on the Pennsylvania side. You're going to find lots of waterfalls because basically the Pennsylvania side is one big cliff, and then the water just drops off on its way down to the Delaware. So you'll find a half dozen waterfalls that are worth checking out. And they can be pretty popular on weekends, but if you go on a weekday, you should have them mostly to yourself. And then right by the Route 206 bridge, which crosses into Pennsylvania from New Jersey. So you pass right through Stokes State Forest, head up, cross the Delaware River. You can do the Cliff Park, Route 209, the Cliff Trail, which is over in this section. And it gives you 2 waterfalls. You get the Raymondskill Falls, which are huge. They're the highest in Pennsylvania. And then Hackers Falls, which is smaller.
Yeah, so we went on. These are the same. That's the same.
Mute that, Jen. Thanks.
He's pointing at others too.
And then Hackers Falls is right over here. And it's just like a water faucet. So we were actually there last Sunday. It was beautiful. And then, so you got Raymondskill Falls on the right. And then this is on the left is the beautiful views of the cliff top looking down on the farming land, which is the floodplain below, and the Delaware River. Western New Jersey, Jump State Forest in Warren County, great point-to-point hikes, again about 7.5 miles long. Voorhees State Park in Hunterdon County, which is a good parking, easy to get to location off of Route 31 and Route 78. And way out west by the Delaware River, the Musconetcong Gorge, which is essentially where the Highlands Trail begins at the New Jersey-Pennsylvania border. And it's got a nice gorge. So let's cross into New York. But before we do, any last questions about New Jersey?
We had a question about the 4 trails.
4 birds?
4 birds, yes. Whether you could make a loop out of it by using some of the wood roads marked on the map.
You can make smaller loops. You can make lots of loops in the southern sections. In the northern section, not so much. Once you get to the north end of Split Rock Reservoir, you really don't have many options. Yes, there are some woods roads, but they're in pretty bad shape, and some of them cross onto private land. So I wouldn't strongly recommend that. What I would say is that you can hike from Route 23 by the Newfoundland train station south. And then as you cross over to Caparis Mountain on the east side of Route 513, you can make a bit of a loop there and then come back down to 513. And then it's just a relatively short road walk to get back to the Newfoundland train station. So that's how I sometimes try to make a loop in the north section.
And when you categorized it as sketchy, was it just for the trail conditions, the markings?
Good question. Yeah, it's a couple of things. There's some flooding in the area, some trails that are being concentrated on right now by the trail conference, beaver dams that have kind of caused the water to go up, and then just a lot of ATV traffic back in there, because like many parts of the Newark watershed, other than the trail conference, nobody's really minding the store there.
Okay. And then what is the official endpoint of the SRT?
All right. So the northern terminus of the SRT is Rosendale, New York. You finish by joining the Wallkill Rail Trail, and a short distance north of there, you cross the beautiful bridge over to the Rosendale, New York side of the creek, and then it ends in basically Rosendale.
Okay, great.
So, yeah.
And then any thoughts on Round Valley in Hunterdon County?
Oh, good. Okay. So Round Valley is, it was listed as one of those parks to avoid because it was pretty crowded last year. It's less of an issue this year. You get a lot of swimmers, so sometimes parking can be an issue. But Round Valley has an upper trail around the reservoir and a lower trail, so you can sort of make a loop of things. That's about it. It's a little bit limited, but definitely a good place to check out if you live down that way and don't want to travel too far.
All right, great. Thank you.
You bet. All right, so let's go to New York. We're going to check out Orange and Rockland counties west of the Hudson first, and we'll just jump right in. So one of my favorite parks is Sterling Forest. Sterling is a vast and diverse type of park. It's just to the west of Harriman State Park, which is super popular, super crowded a lot of times. Sterling Forest is still somewhat under the radar. People who go to Sterling Forest tend to go to the visitors center and hike around the 4.5 mile loop around Sterling Lake, which is very nice. It's very, relatively easy to do, but there's so much more to Sterling Forest. We're going to start by looking at the north end of the park, which is north of Route 17A. If you're taking Route 17A from Route 17, the thruway area, it's going to take you past an old ski area and the Renaissance Fair. And just before you go up the big mountain over to Greenwood Lake, New York, there's a turn on the right called Benjamin Meadow Road. You follow Benjamin Meadow Road for a couple tenths of a mile, and you'll see the Doris Duke Trail parking on your left. It's gotten more popular, but it's a really cool 4.5 mile loop that you can do, which connects to both the Highlands Trail and almost connects to the Appalachian Trail. So you do your 4.5 mile loop, you can connect over on the Alice/Highlands Trail and get over to the AT and get even more views. So it's a nicely built trail as well. Also in the northeast corner of Sterling Forest, which is off of Orange Turnpike, is the Indian Hill area. Indian Hill has lots of different loop options. You can see it in the top right corner here. So lots of trails, lots of options to add on. You'll find very interesting, huge stone fences. You'll find an abandoned farm up there, a pond, and then you'll find a big iron furnace down at the bottom, the Southfields Furnace, which has worth checking out all by itself. You don't even have to go for a hike to find it. Other area to access Sterling Forest from is the east shore of Greenwood Lake. So from the east shore of Greenwood Lake, there are trailheads there, 1 or 2 of them, and you won't get so many crowds, but you'll still be able to get up to the fire tower, the Sterling Forest Fire Tower, to the Bear Rock Trail, which overlooks Greenwood Lake, quite spectacular, and everything else. And then there's eastern Sterling Forest, which has been called the Hole in the Donut. It was the last section of Sterling Forest to be preserved in the early 2000s, and the Trail Conference has been populating that area with trails. At the park's direction, there are multi-use trails. So there's a really cool 8.5 mile loop that you can do through that area. It's off of Longmeadow Road. And it's if you're driving up north along Longmeadow Road toward Route 17A, it'll be on the right-hand side, and it'll be right after the mulch pile. There's a big mulch recycling center, and you'll see a tiny sign called Caretaker's Lot. Pull in there, and you'll be on your way. So that loop, as I said, is it's about an 8.5 mile hike if you do all the connecting pieces, and that is being connected up to another area called McKeague's Meadow that the Trail Conference is working on this spring, and we're connecting those two areas with something called the Augusta Mine Trail. So that will connect another 3 mile loop to this network and add a few more miles in there. So really fun to check out, whether you're a hiker, a runner, or a mountain biker. Couple views from Sterling Forest with the fire tower looking down on Sterling Lake and looking down on Greenwood Lake in the upper right corner. Moving beyond Sterling Forest, one of the other really unexpected areas is the southern Shawangunk. We just talked about the Shawangunk Ridge Trail. Well, the Shawangunk Ridge Trail runs from popular High Point Park all the way through to Minnewaska and Mohunk, also very popular parks. But in the middle is kind of the forgotten Southern Gunk section. So I recommend you check out a couple of parks. Check out Huckleberry Ridge, that's close to Matamoras and Port Jervis. There's a great trail called the Lenape Ridge Minnesink Loop that you can do. To the north of there, we're going to be going there with my running group, Trail Conference Trail Runs, and a group called Run Wild, which is headed by some of the board members of the Trail Conference. We're going to Gobbler's Knob and Bashak Hill. Gobbler's Knob follows a beautiful ridge top on top of the mountain that's got a viewpoint, and then it drops down to the Bashak Hill, which is just a wild river and wetland area. Beyond that is the Fuller Mountain Preserve. Fuller Mountain Preserve is in southern Orange County. It's just to the east of Warwick along the New York-New Jersey state line, but it's on the New York side. And then check out Goose Pond Mountain. Goose Pond Mountain is a developing trail system, so there's not all that much to check out, but it's a very quiet park, and it's very convenient to Route 17, the big quick way leading out toward Binghamton. So it's kind of out by Monroe, New York. All right. And that's a view from the Fuller Preserve, looking down into the orchards of Warwick. And I'm going to jump over toward the Hudson River now. So north of Harriman, north of West Point, is Blackrock Forest. And Blackrock Forest is another relatively quiet place. And you can get to it through kind of some of the backdoor routes. The Hudson Highlands Nature Museum off Angola Road has a great large parking area and a trail network that you can check out that will connect you there. The most direct way to, other than parking in the main crowded Blackrock parking lot, is the Mine Hill parking area, but you want to get there very, very early, and that's off Mine Hill Road, which is also off Angola Road on the northwestern corner of the park. So definitely check out the Highlands Trail. There's that Highlands Trail again, cutting through Blackrock Forest. Excellent views. And the reason it's called Blackrock is because it has a lot of volcanic rock. So the rock actually does look black there. And there's some pretty good scrambling up there. In addition, you'll find things like great lakes and ponds, which are just gorgeous. So this is a look at one of the ponds, Tim's Pond or Sutherland Pond, I think, from on top. Places to avoid on weekends would be Storm King Mountain. Has such spectacular views, but check it out on a weekday. Scunnamunk Mountain has a lot of parking issues right now. Again, a beautiful place to check out, but not on weekends. Rockland Lake, Blauvelt parks are super busy in Rockland. And of course, Harriman is still pretty busy on the weekends, although not as bad as it was this time last year. All right, going to jump over to the Northern Gunks and Catskills now. So to take a we're heading further up the Shokan Ridge Trail. We're not yet to Sam's Point and Minnewaska, but there are 3 different parks. Wurttsboro State Forest, which is down along the Route 17 corridor. This is really cool because it's got great views of the Catskills. You can actually see down south to High Point from there, and also look east to the Hudson Valley. I had an interesting experience there once with a lot of coyotes, but the trail is more visited now than it used to be, and it's just more of a less traveled trail as opposed to being a completely remote place like it was 15 years ago. Rusa Gap connects to that, and that's an interesting place. It's got some excellent views as well, and it has a fire tower. And then the Shokan Ridge State Forest is the farthest to the north. And that's the closest to Sam's Point. Still not super crowded, and it has a small loop hike option there as well. All these can be found on your Shokan Trails map set, which is they're on map 106. Now, I always used to recommend going to the Catskills because they were the best bang for your buck, and nobody appreciated the Catskills. Well, that's all changed. People are still flocking to the Adirondacks and clogging up the roads and the peaks there, but now the Catskills are also super popular. So if you're going to go to the Catskills, I recommend you steer clear of the popular long distance paths like the Devil's Path, at least on weekends, the Burroughs Range, which is Wittenberg, Cornell, and Slide, and definitely Giant Sledge, which is super popular and almost impossible to get into on weekends. Also, the 3,500 peaks with trails are going to be super popular because everyone's trying to bag their peaks. The Blue Hole Swimming Area, North-South Lake, and Overlook Mountain. I sound like I'm taking away Christmas here, but these are such beautiful places. But check them out on a weekday. And if you are going on a weekend, there are other alternatives. One of my favorites is Shokan High Peak. So it's on the western edge of the Shokan Reservoir. It's not a 3,500 foot peak, but it's like more than 3,000 feet. And it's got a fantastic view of the reservoir. And you can even pop down to a lower view, and the lower view is even more spectacular. Other places, Beaver Kill Ridge, Kelly Hollow. You can also check out the Western Catskills, which are definitely quieter. They don't have the same high elevations and views, but the Willow-Amok Wild Forest and Monksville Pond are really awesome to check out. And then farther north, Greene County is just a popular county. There's only so many trails. Everybody's going to Black Dome, Blackhead, Thomas Cole Mountain. Everybody's going to Windham High Peak. But in Windham itself, there's a beautiful little path called the Windham Path. And then the long path goes north of the Catskill Blue Line. And that's a really cool place to go check out. That's off the radar. And finally, we're going to move east of the Hudson. So those of you who live east of the Hudson, if you have any specific questions, chat them in now. Westchester County, in particular the Yorktown area, has a wealth of small parks, medium-sized parks, county parks that are worth checking out. Just check out Yorktown trails. My personal favorites are Sylvan Glen, Granite Knolls. So I'm going to jump into that first. Sylvan Glen and Granite Knolls, and there's one other to the east of it that I can't think of the name of. They're all connected to each other, and beautiful network of trail. The reason I recommend Sylvan Glen is because it's a reforested granite quarry. So it was once an ugly quarry with big cuts and cliffs in it. Now it's a deep forest with amazing clifftop views and rock formations to check out. Also has lots of remnants, historic remnants. You can park there. So really cool to check out. Granite Knolls has a gigantic stone wheel that you can check out there. So that's pretty interesting too. Wonder Lake State Park in Putnam County. So this is a good alternative to Fahnestock State Park. Fahnestock State Park is actually not that crowded right now compared to the way it was last year. So, but if you really want a quieter location, Wonder Lake is on the northeast side of Interstate Route 84. And it's a rugged park, it's a rustic park, and it has a decent amount of trails plus a lake there. And then jumping up into Dutchess County is the Stony Kill Farm. If you're looking for a wild, rustic experience, you won't find it here, but you will find quiet trails that are, multiple trails, a lot of history, nice farmhouse, and I believe they're reopening their visitor center. So it's a really cool place to check out. Now, for those of you who are still going to Harriman, we're all still going to Harriman because it's great there, right? So where's it quiet? My suggestion is check out the western side of the park, stay away from Bear Mountain on the weekends, and go to the interior. If you're willing to hike a bit, you can get to some decent places. You've got 52,000 acres to work with. There's almost 250 miles of trails there, and there are lots of long distance trail experiences. So you can do a 19-mile stretch of the Appalachian Trail. You can do the Suffern Bear Mountain Trail. Not my favorite long distance trail, but it has about 23 miles of adventure on it. And then you can check out the Ramapo Dunderberg Trail, which is about 20 miles long, and it's right in the middle of the park, and just beautiful. Every direction you look, all you see is Harriman. Lakes, wetlands, big iron mines. So I was really taken by Harriman when I wrote the book Circuit Hikes in Harriman, and just kept finding more and more amazing stuff there. I wrote this book it finished up in 2015. It's in its 3rd edition right now. Basically, all the proceeds go to the trail conference. So, if you're interested in checking out Harriman, it's a good one because it'll give you 37 different hike options. Plus you'll get maps, detailed elevation profiles, ways to lengthen and shorten your loop, history, photos, and there are 8 chapters that are tailor-made for trail runs. So they're flowier and a little less rocky and steep, but also good for if you're taking someone who's a less experienced hiker. So this is just what a page looks like. At the start of a chapter, you'll see time, distance, difficulty, what attractions you'll see, the GPS coordinates, a map, and this elevation profile down here at the bottom shows you basically what you're in for. As I said, Harriman is super popular, and it's reflective of many of the issues that the Trail Conference is grappling with in this 2nd century of service. So in 2020, end of 2020, we just turned 100 years old. And the trails, are showing the signs of their years. The Ramapo Dunderberg Trail is over 100 years old now. And many trails were just built straight up the mountain and not built for the kind of traffic that we get today. So as a result, we've got crowds, we've got big storms, and we've got, that happen it seems every couple of years. And we've got structural erosion issues on thousands of miles of trails. So our goal as an organization is to take places like Harriman, make them more sustainable, try to work with the parks to provide more parking, and then harden the trails so that they can withstand all the people who are inevitably going to be coming to the park. You'll see that at Bear Mountain. Bear Mountain's an extreme example. We don't want to do that everywhere, but we're reconstructing the trails to make them sustainable. It's costly and it's time consuming, but in the long run, it's going to be worth it. And we can do our part by checking out less popular trails. Anyway, in closing, well, first of all, any other questions about the trails in New York?
Sure, we had a few about Indian Hill, about the walls. Any idea who built them and why they're so wide?
Okay. Well, it was farmland. And nobody seems to know why they're double walls in a lot of cases. So you've got these big walls that are very wide, and they're kind of one right on the other side of the other. The best guesses I've heard is that there are just so many rocks that they needed some place to put them, and so they built these massive walls. But they're pretty impressive to look at.
And then a question about fire towers. Are they open?
Okay. Fire towers, it's catch as catch can. You don't know what you're going to get. The Sterling Forest fire tower has been I've often gotten to the bottom of the fire tower and found the stairwell closed. But on the Barefoot Fire Tower in the Pequannock watershed, I've never had trouble getting up to the top. As to whether you can get into the little room at the top, that all depends on whether somebody's up there and whether they let you in. But Barefoot Fire Tower is pretty easy to get to. The fire towers in the Catskills actually have people manning them on weekends. So your chances of getting into the, let's say, the Hunter Fire Tower or the Balsam Lake Fire Tower are pretty darn good. So good ones to check out.
And then is Sylvan Glen open to all residents? New Jersey State, there was a sign that said residents only.
I've never had trouble getting into Sylvan Glen. There are some parking areas, like there's a dog park on the western side that may be a residents only parking area, but it's a county park and it's not closed to the public. So okay. Sylvan Glen itself is open to the public. What I'd recommend, let me just add one thing. If you go to the eastern end of the park here, I can't quite see the name of the road, but there are ball fields in this area here, and we always park up in around here and never have any trouble.
Okay, great. And then there's a request to hear the coyote story.
Okay, real quick, I'll keep it short. So I'm on the Schwangunk Ridge Trail in Wurttsboro. And it's like hiking on the Appalachian Trail. You're hiking on the same ridge as the Kittatinny Ridge in New Jersey, except there is not a soul to be found anywhere. So I was having beautiful views out to the west, looking out toward the western Catskills, and I decided to go and take a look on the eastern ridge to see if I could see into Orange County, see Middletown. And so I did. I followed some unmarked trails to the eastern area. There were woods roads, and I could see the remnants of what was to be a development. They were going to build a bunch of trophy homes there, and somehow it got stopped, or they ran out of money or whatever. So there was a big cut through at the top of the mountain where they had bulldozed what would be a road to connect up to the developments. And as I was crossing from one high spot through across this divide to the other spot, I was looking at big blueberry bushes and views. And I looked back from the north side back to the south side, and I saw a huge coyote. It looked like a wolf. It looked big, it looked mean. It was bigger than any coyote I'd ever seen. And it really rattled me. So I started yelling at it, and it just kept staring at me. It was in a locked gaze with me. So I then started picking up rocks and trying to throw rocks at the thing. And I'm a pretty bad aim, so anyway, so a couple of misses, and then I finally got one that was a little bit closer, and then I saw another coyote's head pop up, slightly smaller, right next to it. Now I'm freaking out. I throw some more rocks, yell some more, and I got one that was within a couple feet of the alpha male coyote. And all of a sudden, the alpha male takes off to the right toward the ridge's edge. The other coyote takes off with it, along with 12 other coyotes that I hadn't seen, that were all crouched down in the blueberry bushes that I had just walked past. And so my hands finally stopped shaking. I got back on the Schwangunk Ridge Trail and I decided that I would never do that again. But anyway, it's a much more heavily used trail now. That was then, but yeah, you can see stuff like that. So,
wow, that's really crazy.
Also, the other thing that's weird about that is that they say coyotes pack up, but they pack up in wintertime. And this was right about now. It was late May, early June. So I don't know why they were all together like that, for what it's worth.
And then just one other question is, would the people at the manning the fire station, fire towers, be annoyed if anyone comes and looks around, or is that kind of what they're there for?
Yeah, unless they tell you you can't go up the fire tower, they're expecting people to go out and explore the view. Yeah, I mean, you'll see sometimes they'll put a chain across and it says, no trespassing, but if it doesn't say no trespassing, go ahead and trespass.
Okay,
Not
awesome.
trespass, but explore.
That is all the questions, and then just a lot of praise on the presentation, which give it a few days and we will get an edited version of the video, and then Don and I can share the presentation PowerPoint, most likely maybe in two. The file might be too big.
Thank you. That's really great. Thanks, everybody. I appreciate I hope that this is helpful to you, and I hope you find some great places to explore near you. Like I said, I work for the Trail Conference now, but I've been a member since I was 28, so that's like 30 years now. I hike, and I need these trails to keep my sanity. It's a need for me, and I guess for many of us. The trails give us back a lot to our mental health or physical health. I think they're really important for kids to learn to fall in love with the outdoors and want to protect our environment. So that's why it's always been my #1 charity. And, I'd love to chat with you more, just about any aspect of the Trail Conference if you want to learn more about what we do. And check out our website as well. You can find the maps we talked about, the Harriman book, all the information that you need. So many thanks.
All right, great. Any last